Paul,
Fab.
how's it going?
Good. You?
Good. So we teased last week whether you watched it live or in audio format on the podcast. This week's episode. So here we are. We are going to talk about dropping the ball on sales leads. That's my marketing title to it. But you had a great insight, and I know we've talked about various versions of this, or touched on it a few times over since the beginning of the show. But it's about following up, right? And you were giving the example that a whole bunch of people had reached out to you on LinkedIn recently, and some of them might be interesting, but you don't have time. You're a busy executive of your own company, and a lot of people are not following up with you, and therefore their potential deals are falling through the cracks. That's the setup for the show.
That's a great setup.
Thanks. So, why don't we follow up with people? And you're right, we spend so much time trying to find these leads on LinkedIn, and marketing, spending all this money generating leads, and then sales sends one email, and then that's it.
It's interesting. Okay, so I have a theory on this, and I want your opinion on my theory. But, I think as human beings, the last thing we want to be is seen as spammers or pain in the ass, right?
Right.
And I think what happens when you send out an email is you imagine your client on the other side, totally concentrated on that email, and it's all he's reading, and he's making a conscious, or she's making a conscious decision to say, this guy's out, or this guy's in, or this girl's in, or this girl's out. It's like, and if they don't respond, you imagine them going, oh, what is this stupidity? I'm just going to put it in the trash. And I think all salespeople have a little bit of this. We all
right.
Like, I don't care how senior you are, or if you're Victor Antonio, or if you're, the best sales coach in the world. We all get that little bit. Oh, was that a good email? Was that a bad email? Was that a good LinkedIn message or bad? So I think when you send it, or when I realize this as a sales guy, on the other side, I'm going, I kind of half read it. I go, that's kind of interesting. I even wrote back to someone on LinkedIn, yeah, sure, I'd like to hear more. They didn't even send it. That's just stupid follow-up. But some people say, okay, yeah, and then they send me something, and I don't follow up as quickly as I should, and then they give up on me. The other analogy I want to use, and I know I'm long-winded, I always am. The other analogy I like to use is, if you walk into a store and it's like someone coming up to you, hey, can I help you? And you're going, oh, I'm not too sure. I'm kind of looking around. And if the person just walked away and never came back, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, exactly. And I was, I've signed up for a program available to HubSpot partners, which is like their pipeline generation boot camp. It's an intensive 8-week program. And in there, their sales coach, or whatever you want to call him, he says, like, part of it is also that's exactly what you said, right? Is that, we have the vision that somebody's getting our email and getting super frustrated. Why? Because, like, we've gotten sales calls and we've gotten sales emails, and we're like, this is stupid and this annoys me. And we just don't want to be that person. We don't want to be the annoying person that sends a shitty email that's too bothersome. And I think that's really ultimately what most of the time it boils down to. You just don't want to be a shitty salesperson.
Yeah, you don't want to be shitty salesperson. But here's the reality of sales, and you know this because we've been talking about it for forever. Is that a salesperson, when they reach out, when they make cold calls, you've done them yourself, you've written emails, you're not going to get 100% win rate. Which means that, if you're lucky, 10, 15, 20, 30% of the people are going to respond positively, but the other 70%, which is the majority, 70 and 90%, are just going to flush you. But you have to decide when to disqualify or when to go for that low-hanging fruit, right? So if you're just making one call and giving up, well, your closing ratio is going to be even lower. So it's sort of to say to yourself, okay, how many emails am I going to do, and what follow-up am I going to do? I also get the impression, in particularly in LinkedIn marketing, this happens a lot in LinkedIn. They'll send you an email and they don't have a proper follow-up strategy. You know, whoever they're using, you know, WeConnect or whatever, they have this strategy. It's probably automated. They go back and they sort of drop it out. Maybe they're disqualifying me, but you know, if they are, okay, if it's a conscious decision, fine. It's okay. You know, I didn't respond quickly enough. They have a lot of interest right away. And they sort of say, okay, you know, this Lafleur guy, he's kind of wishy-washy. He's second tier or third tier, and that's okay. But just be aware of what you're doing, and that, you know, what is the process? What is the procedure for you to eventually disqualify? Because let's be honest, in sales, if you're doing cold call sales or even warm call sales or lead generation, you know, coming from lead generation that is not super qualified, you're probably going to end up disqualifying a majority of the leads that come in, you know. And if that's the case, then you need to know what your process is so that you're making the decision and you're not doing it in fear because you're hiding under your desk because you're afraid someone's going to think you're a spammer, right?
Right. And you know, to touch on the LinkedIn automation, I mean, I haven't tested it in a while, but you know, one of the big issues that I saw when I did test it was that LinkedIn's inbox is not meant really for massive amounts of inbound mail, right? So what happens is they launch these automated campaigns, and they're getting replies, right, from everybody, from maybe not everybody, like obviously not everybody, but a whole bunch of people. And then, you know, LinkedIn's inbox is not meant to manage hundreds or thousands of replies in one shot, right? And so you kind of turn it on, and then you look at it, and then you're like, man, where do I start with these thousands of replies? And obviously somebody's going to fall through the cracks, right? And so, you know, there's, and brings me kind of a bit to that second part, which is like, you need a process. You know, I think what you need to do if you're going to, especially if you go into this automation game, whether it's email automation or LinkedIn automation or whatever, you need a good process, right? Because that's what happens is like, you'll get all these replies and then you don't have time to follow up. So what's the point? You've invested X thousand to do this, and then you're just decreasing your ROI just because you're not doing anything with them.
Yeah, and so there's two things, right? Is it because your mechanism, your automation mechanism is not properly tuned, or are you just really fearful of following up? Because the other thing too is some people, and you've heard this from the past. So let's say we're talking about the good old traditional cold call, you know, picking up the phone. You know, you've connected with the person on LinkedIn, or you've tried to, you've done everything you can, you've gone on their website, you've downloaded as much information as you can about the person that you're calling, and you've decided this is a good prospect. You know, they have the right size company, they use, you know, products of my competitors, you know, they're in my region, you know, I have a lot of competitors that, or I have a lot of clients that are similar to them. So, you know, you've decided on this and you make a phone call and then you just give up, right? You can leave a message. If you leave a message, you know, you might have to leave 3, 4, 5, 6 messages, and you might, there's a statistic out there that it takes, you know, it varies, but it takes from like 5 to 15 calls to get through to someone for the first time.
Right.
Well, is it because you're being a spammer? No, you're calling a receptionist, he's not there, blah, blah, blah. You might not leave a message every time. So you need to have that strategy built in and saying, look, if this is really a well-qualified lead, well, then you want to make sure that you're going through with it, and that, you know, you might sporadically call. The person might be super busy. I've had people say, oh, I tried calling you a few times, and I've taken some messages. Oh, I feel bad, I can't call this person back. Meanwhile, on the other side, they're thinking, oh, I'm spamming him. Well, yeah. Hey, I mean, if you have a business number out there, it's made to be called. And if they don't answer, it's fine. You just have to have a smart strategy. But don't give up, and don't think of yourself as a spammer.
Yeah.
One last thing for me, and then I'll let you answer. I'm sorry. Because think about it. If you really believe in what you are selling or the product that you're going to be installing or using or whatever it is, if you really believe it's going to help your client, then your consistency, your tenacity, your capacity to stay with it is going to help them eventually. It's not going to hurt them. It's not just about selling something. Now, if you're just a peddler of some shitty product or some shitty service, then yeah, you should feel bad because you're just a peddler. But if you're really going to help the person, well, then you're being consistent because you know it's going to help them. So
right, exactly. And so, and I think that's a good segue to what I had on my mind, which is like that's where your certain sales automation tools, whether it's outreach or whether it's like HubSpot sales sequences, is that it gives you the structure to follow up the right number of time, right? And so you add your lead, like Paul as your lead, and then step 1 is make a call, right? Then step 2 is maybe send an email, then step 3 another call, and 4 another call. And so it kind of takes away the guessing game, and it works on a few different levels, right? Because you're also accountable. Like your manager can go in and say like, why you have so many things stuck at one step, and so on and so forth. So I think that's where a good place where tools can actually help a salesperson do a better job. And because it's just there for you. Like the reminder's already all set up. But it's also then setting up your process, right? I was talking to a lead yesterday, and he's going on vacation, so we're not going to have our next meeting until a month from now. But I said I'd call him like next week just to see because he was having an internal meeting. And first thing I did is I went to my CRM and I added a task for myself to call for next week, right? It's like, or go to your Google Calendar or whatever, whatever works for you. But it's also building in that process that the second you say, I'm going to follow up, you put a note somewhere, post it.
That's the key, Fab, because there's two sides to it, right? There's the human being, which doesn't like to be rejected. As a human being, if you're making calls, you don't like to be rejected. So and you said, it's brilliant what you said. If you establish that process, you say, okay, I'm going to call 5 times. I'm going to leave 5 messages, and then I'm going to call another, whatever it might be. I'm making this up, and I'm going to send 3 emails, and I'm going to send 4 LinkedIn messages, because, you're in that type of niche industry where it's really hard to reach someone, but you know that you have a product that can make a difference. Well, if you write down that process, at the end of every call, instead of going, oh, again, you've said to yourself, this might take up to 15 times.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sell some special service to a government office, a leader, maybe there's a process, and okay, I've done this before. I've looked at my numbers. I've looked at the process. On average, so then you're just doing it. You're not feeling horrible every time you hang up. You're saying it's part of the deal. It's part of the process. It's going to take me an hour of phone calls without talking to the person before I actually reach them, or a certain kind of email, or I'm gonna have to mail them something in the mail, or whatever it might be, before I manage to get through to this person. And I think if you do that, like you just said, if you establish that process, then you have a winning strategy. But follow your process.
Yeah.
Follow your process, because if you don't, you're setting yourself for failure. You're selling yourself.
Exactly, and then I find, I mean, for me, but for a lot of people, I think for a lot of people I've spoken to, like having a process then frees you up to like think of different things, like like obviously connecting on different platforms. There's LinkedIn, but I mean, sometimes if it's a good fit lead and you notice something they said online, sending them a book, or like because you have that process set up, you can then be creative and think of different things to just stand out and reach out as well.
Yeah. And in the B2B world, that's 99% of what we're talking about is a B2B world. There's a true reality that you have to be aware of, and you have to calculate those numbers. You have to tell yourself, what are my statistics in my industry? What kind of reach out in the successful times that I've had from a cold start? What has it taken for me to get there from cold start to close? Mm-hmm. Not the referral from your best friend's father who's doing the business, but really, cold start, warm start, referral. So you really know that reality. Right.
Yeah, and you're completely right. I think that's then you can develop your own benchmarks. Like if you're a smaller company, or if you never looked at the benchmarks, or your CRM's not set up for you to measure that, like maybe you can start with general industry trends. But then as a company matures and as you get better at logging all your activities, you can start seeing how long it actually takes you. So then you could be like, okay, well, on average, it takes us 12 connection attempts. So you can say like at attempt 13, that's it, we're done. On average, this person is not going to get back to us. And that's where working with your marketing team works as well, right? Because your marketing team can help you expand your reach, right? Whether it's through, ad targeting campaigns, or like maybe some newsletters with some special like call to actions or whatnot. And so because some people might take 53 times to reach out to them, right? Because when you first started out, they weren't there yet.
Yeah.
And so that's where the synergy between the sales and marketing starts making sense.
I totally agree. That's why we work together.
All right. Do you have anything else to add?
What I'd like to do, and I'm not sure, Fab and I will talk about this, I'm saying this live, but maybe maybe eventually we'll come back with really a tactical way of figuring this out, because I think there's some real good tools out there. Not, of course, there's a CRM you're using, whether you're automating or not, but how to figure out, I mean, it's quite simple, but really how to calculate and figure out your own numbers. You know, in those three categories, referrals, warm, and then cold. You know, what's the process? So if anyone has any ideas,
that'd be interesting. Probably requires a little prep, but I think we could do something. We could do something fun with that. Yeah. And I had a good idea for next week, because maybe we're on a trend of teasing the episode. I landed on an interesting post, and so I've decided to name next week's episode is "Why Are Marketing Leads So Shitty?"
Okay, I'm anxious to hear why marketing leads are so shitty. Is that sales talking to marketing, or is that a general statement?
The post I saw was actually a marketer talking to marketers.
All right, okay, I like that. Yeah, I know sales are always complaining, well, your leads aren't good. Sales wants the lead to be closed before you call them.
there is some of that at play, but there's also a lot of stuff that marketers need to take into account, and business leaders need to be more aware of. I think there's a panoply, a variety of reasons that are intermingled that lead to this shitty marketing lead syndrome.
I like when you stick in fancy words and you doubt yourself. That was actually a very good panoply. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. See you next week.